Before AI, before the internet, humans tapped into something else. Spontaneous knowledge that surfaced fully formed, offering clarity on some of life's biggest questions. Like a human-powered GPT, these transmissions appeared out of nowhere. Spoken through mysterious mystics, oracles, intuitives, and channelings. Fully formed messages from non-local consciousness, meant to shift how we see the world and ourselves. Through today's materialist lens, we call this irrational. But what if it isn't? What if there are hidden clues in these forgotten transmissions? Fragments that could help us recover a more complete sense of identity in a world that no longer remembers what it means to be human. I'm Dustin, and this is HumanGPT Forgotten Transmissions, presented by Aten. In each episode, we explore fragments of wisdom scattered across time, pulled from old writings, recovered recordings, or messages that came through unusual means. We don't name the messenger, and we don't have time to waste debating belief. We're examining these transmissions for anything useful, whatever might help piece together a lost sense of identity in a world spinning without a compass.
What holds one back from receiving the great gift of love is not rejection. It is the fear of coming into completion within oneself. For to be whole means to take the full weight, but also the full exhilaration of who you truly are.
It has everything to do with it. It has everything for you to sit here and practice. Look at me when I talk to you. It has everything.
There's a rhythm beneath your thoughts. Two forces, ancient and alive. One that reaches forward, and one that draws inward. One gives shape, another gives depth. When they move together, you feel clear, present, whole. But when they fall out of step, the world feels off, inside and out. You speak when you should listen. You guard when you long to open. You disappear or take too much. Not from failure, but from a sort of forgetting. This is the sacred relationship. Not between people, but between the polarities within, masculine and feminine, structure and flow, presence and feeling. And when they lose connection inside of you, the fracture extends outward. It shows up in our relationships, in our families, in our politics, even in the violence we see and the numbness we carry. What begins as imbalance within becomes dissonance in the world. But something still remembers. In dreams, in symbols, in the way your body leans toward truth without knowing why. HumanGPT is brought to you by Aten, makers of mystic tools and media for a more conscious world. Visit atenray.com, ATENRAY.com. It's been said that the balance of anger and fear, with passion and compassion, harvested in the now, is the sacred relationship. It isn't gone. It's simply been forgotten. Let's begin.
Originally, man and woman were created in the spirit, not as dualities, but as polarities, souls of identical vibration among many souls.
The soul was created in the image of God, both male and female. In the spirit, you were androgynous.
In those early periods, beings were androgynous, neither male nor female, but containing both sexes within one physical body. The body appeared more masculine by default, and took on a feminine appearance only at the time of birthing, which occurred by will.
The male represented the focal point of activity. The feminine was the force of attraction in an unbroken cycle. These energies shaped the structure of human consciousness and sexuality.
Even now, in the spirit, you are created in polarity, male and female, working together in balance.
According to this transmission, the soul was not created in halves. It was split into male and female. It was whole, formed as an androgynous being carrying both masculine and feminine forces in harmony. These weren't opposing traits, but complementary polarities of the same unified consciousness. In its original design, the soul expressed both energies at once. Masculine as movement, structure, and initiation. Feminine as receptivity, depth, and embodiment. These polarities weren't meant to compete or take turns. They were meant to circulate a continuous exchange. The transmission calls this an unbroken cycle, suggesting that wholeness came from rhythm, not hierarchy. The physical form, too, reflected this unity. In the early memory described here, beings were androgynous, not fixed in gender, but capable of taking on masculine or feminine expression as needed. Reproduction was willful, not mechanical. Form followed energy. Biology served consciousness, not the other way around. This directly challenges our modern framing, where masculinity and femininity are often reduced to gender identity, role, or orientation. But what's being described here is pre-cultural. It's energetic. It's built into the soul itself. The implication is that every human being, regardless of their external identity, contains both polarities internally and has the capacity to live from that balance. And this isn't about sameness. To say the soul is androgynous is to say it is complete. It holds polarity in a functional, generative relationship. The masculine provides clarity and containment. The feminine provides feeling and flow. When both are awake and communicating within us, we operate from coherence, not confusion or conflict. When that balance is forgotten, we begin to look outside ourselves to feel whole. We search for someone to give us what we're missing. We split ourselves into roles, hoping that another person will restore what we've left unintegrated inside. But this teaching suggests that nothing is missing. The sacred relationship doesn't begin with another person. It begins inside, with the rhythm of these two forces learning to move together again.
Originally, man and woman were created in the spirit, as expressions of male and female polarity, not duality.
There was a fall from spirit into the flesh, when those spirits entered this plane and took on physical bodies.
In the Atlantean days, the populace as a whole became selfish, and the collective consciousness divided into male and female.
The androgynous state eventually died out, and the current human form became dominated by the division of masculine and feminine.
Masculine and feminine split into form through selfishness.
The disunity between humanity and nature is not because the sacred relationship has ceased, but because it has gone unacknowledged.
There has been a disunion between masculine and feminine in the activities of creation, a disunion between the concepts of God and goddess.
The sacred relationship, this pre-existing unity, harmony, and light, is still present, but it has been ignored.
The moment polarity turned into opposition, the sacred relationship broke. Not because it disappeared, but because we stopped recognizing it. According to this transmission, the so-called fall wasn't just about entering physical form. It was about forgetting the inner unity we came from. In the spirit, masculine and feminine existed as balanced forces within each soul. But when consciousness moved into flesh, into bodies, into survival, into culture, those forces split. The polarity remained, but the memory of how to hold both dissolved. Where there was once a dance, now there was tension. Instead of creative contrast, we began to experience conflict. Masculine and feminine became fixed roles, then rival powers, and eventually competing ideologies. The deeper unity that once defined us turned into a fractured identity. Selfishness played a role in that factor. Not selfishness as greed, but as fear. A turning inward, a closing off. In that state, the masculine overextended into domination. The feminine withdrew into passivity. Each energy became distorted in response to the absence of the other. And so the sacred relationship didn't vanish, it went underground. It moved into the unconscious, into our longing, into our unresolved emotional patterns. It became something we try to fix in others instead of remembering in ourselves. Every modern relational crisis, between partners, between genders, between human beings and nature, stems from this forgotten unity. What was once an inner harmony now shows up as outer conflict. But the message here is clear. The sacred relationship never broke. It was only ignored. It waits for our recognition, and the return begins not in theory, but in practice. When we stop acting out our disconnection and begin to reintegrate what we've pushed away, we begin to repair what never truly left us. This is the cost of forgetting and the beginning of remembering.
The whole body cannot contain the entire essence of the luminosity, the light that is the soul. It is as though you then in turn cast a shadow.
Shadows have a source. The odd thing about that source is, it is the very light itself.
The shadow is what you often refer to as the negativity in your life: fear, anger, guilt, shame.
The soul in this transmission is not a metaphor. It's light, active, radiant, too expansive to be fully housed within the human body. When that light enters form, it doesn't disappear. It displaces, it bends, it creates contrast. That contrast is what we experience as the shadow. The shadow, in this context, is not a moral problem. It's a byproduct of incarnation. The body is a vessel, the soul is a force, and when the soul enters form, something must be left unintegrated, something that falls into contrast and creates tension. That tension appears in our lives as reactive patterns, emotional turbulence, and internal conflict. But the source of those shadows? According to this transmission, it's the very light itself. In other words, your shadow is evidence of soul presence, not soul absence. Just as a candle casts a shadow on a wall, not because it's broken, but because it burns. Your shadow exists because something luminous is trying to express itself through your human experience. Fear, anger, shame. These may rise from the shadow, but that doesn't make them wrong. It makes them indicators of where your light is pressing up against unhealed or unrecognized parts of your story. This is where spiritual insight meets psychological truth. Carl Jung called it shadow work, but here it takes on a deeper meaning. It's not just about becoming functional or whole. It's about recognizing the places where your light is actively trying to re-enter your awareness. Your shadow doesn't mean you're failing. It means you're here. It means you're luminous. And it also means your work isn't to escape the shadow, but to recognize it as a guide. The stronger the shadow, the stronger the source. The more intense the pattern, the more soul there is to integrate. Shadow isn't a curse, it's a compass. And when you follow it inward, you don't just heal pain, you remember who you are.
Inside of each person in their humanity is male and female, not according to gender, but according as though the divine expression that there is male and female.
It is the balance of that masculine and feminine that is the restoration of the sacred relationship.
When you heal the male and female within, you may heal the relationship with nature. You may heal the relationship with family.
To heal the masculine and the feminine inside of ourselves, we have healed those elements of ourselves that are awesomely human.
When you heal the male and female within, there is the clear distinction that ye thyself become empowered to be the healer.
There's a term from ancient tradition, hieros gamos, a Greek phrase meaning sacred marriage. It referred to the ceremonial union of masculine and feminine principles, meant to mirror cosmic balance. In this transmission, hieros gamos isn't ritual, it's internal. It describes a shift that happens when we stop seeing our inner polarities as opposites and begin experiencing them as collaborative forces. According to this material, each person contains both masculine and feminine energy, not metaphorically, but by design. These energies are not based on gender identity or roles. The masculine expresses as structure, movement, and direction. The feminine expresses as feeling, intuition, and presence. Both are essential. Both are part of the soul's architecture. When these energies become imbalanced, when one dominates or collapses, we lose access to clarity, emotional stability, and relational coherence. We may feel disconnected, reactive, overly rational, or emotionally overwhelmed. Many people live entirely from one polarity and suppress the other. The result is fragmentation within the self and eventually in relationships. The healing begins by recognizing that what we often judge as a flaw is actually part of an energetic imbalance. The part that's too controlling may be masculine force trying to create safety. The part that feels too reactive may be a feminine energy trying to be heard. Neither is the enemy. Each is doing its job, just without the support of its counterpart. But safety without expression becomes confinement. This is what so many are facing today. The struggle to feel safe while also being fully expressed. That tension often plays out as emotional self-sabotage, shutdown, or projection. And at the root of it is something ancient. A moment in the human story where trust was lost, where the unified consciousness of the soul split into protector and expressor, and those roles stopped communicating. Healing this divide means restoring that communication, not erasing one energy or overcorrecting with the other, but honoring both. When the inner masculine supports the feminine, protection serves feeling. When the feminine respects the masculine, emotion flows with direction. This is where wholeness begins, not just spiritually, but practically. We relate differently. We listen differently. We love differently. The transmission tells us, when you heal the male and female within, you become the healer. This isn't metaphorical. It means that when inner union is restored, the clarity, compassion, and coherence that emerge begin to impact everything. Your relationships, your decisions, your sense of belonging. It's not about becoming a new person. It's about becoming your full self. One that's no longer fighting from the inside. This is the sacred relationship, not something we find, something we remember and restore.
Fear, if correctly identified, is not something that should be fled from. It is a deep, penetrating concern of the issue of the moment. Once you realize that fear and concern are synonymous, you begin to realize that the next level of concern is the higher value known as compassion. Compassion is the light. Concern is your humanity. And the shadow merely points the way.
Anger is the ability to sense that there has been a violation in the process of life. To be courageous is the beginning of the healing of anger. Courage is the ability to confront, to look into one's own anger, to contain it like a fire until it is tempered, like the blacksmith's, done with courage, not the rawness of anger.
In the highest sense of the word, there are no such things as emotions, only varying degrees of the one true energy, which is love. Anger is but the blockage of love. Fear, the absence of understanding. All emotions are gradients of one thing: love in motion, or love in tension.
This transmission reframes everything we think we know about negative emotions. Anger, fear, shame, guilt. These aren't mistakes in our design, they're messages. They are signals from within, alerting us to something unspoken, something misaligned, something unacknowledged in the soul. Fear is a deep penetrating concern. Anger is the sense of a violation in the process of life. Rather than being forces to suppress or bypass, these emotions are expressions of love blocked or love misunderstood. Anger arises not from hatred, but from care, from knowing even unconsciously that something sacred has been dishonored. Fear emerges not from cowardice, but from the instinct to protect, to guard something we hold dear. The mistake we make is interpreting these emotions as failures rather than forms of guidance. This transmission doesn't just affirm emotion, it dignifies it. It describes anger as a potential for courage, and fear as a gateway to compassion. Both are sacred when integrated. Both are immature only when left unexamined. Compassion is the light. Concern is your humanity, and the shadow merely points the way. This is a radical message. What you call fear may actually be the soul preparing to love deeper. What you call anger may actually be your integrity rising to speak. But there's a specific path, and it begins by not acting on these emotions immediately, but by holding them in inner awareness, letting them mature, letting them become language. When you follow this path, anger becomes passion with purpose. Fear becomes intimacy with the unknown. Shame simply becomes a signal for boundaries and realignment. Do not act in anger. Act in courage. Let the fire be tempered like the blacksmith's. What leaves you then will be appropriate. This process is not repression. It's refinement. It's what alchemy always meant, transforming base matter into gold, not by throwing it away, but by heating it, shaping it, and letting it reveal its essence. In this view, emotions aren't dangerous, they're divine. They're the indicators of the inner masculine and feminine trying to find balance again. And healing doesn't mean being emotionless, it means becoming emotionally fluent.
Sexuality is the dialogue between two bodies, of the male and female accord, and the other forms of sexuality as the mind may manifest them. Relationship between two individuals in the accord of sexuality, again affected by spirituality, is the sharing of intimacies between each other.
Lust is the desire of dominance of another individual to have personal need met. Lust becomes the definition wherein thought would dominate the individual and enslave them to their own consciousness. Lust is selfish desire.
The body physical is a temple, not only for self-indulgement, but for the incarnation of new souls. intimacies are the dialogue of the body physical, shared in balance and with the greatest sensitivity. Love is harmony between two individuals.
Sexuality as a goal on its own right would eventually bring an individual to naught. But sexuality with knowledge of the spirit can bring an individual into bonds of great joy, bonds that do not bind, but focus.
This transmission offers a quiet revolution in how we think about sex. In a culture where sexuality is often reduced to performance, conquest, or transaction, this wisdom reframes it as a dialogue of the soul through the body, a sacred act, not because it's rare or idealized, but because of how deeply it can reveal us to ourselves and each other. Sexuality is the dialogue between two bodies, of the male and female accord, and the other forms of sexuality as the mind may manifest them. This dialogue isn't limited to intercourse. It includes the way we touch, the way we see, the way we listen with our whole presence. Sacred sexuality begins with sensitivity, not sensation. It's about recognition, not consumption. The body, in this worldview, is not an object to be used, nor a reward to be earned. It's a temple, a vessel that houses both soul and potential life. When we forget this, intimacy turns transactional. When we remember, it becomes transformational. Lust is selfish desire, the desire of dominance of another individual to have personal need met. Here, lust is defined not as sexual attraction, but as the attempt to control or consume. It's the act of separating sexuality from love, from presence, from mutuality. And when that happens, the act itself becomes hollow, no matter how intense. Contrast that with sacred sexuality. Sexuality with knowledge of the spirit can bring an individual into bonds of great joy, bonds that do not bind, but focus. In this state, intimacy isn't a goal, it's a field of awareness. It's a space where souls meet, not just bodies, where presence becomes the true pleasure. And in that space, power dynamics dissolve. There is no dominance, only reciprocity. This wisdom challenges both purity culture and hookup culture. It doesn't shame desire, it honors it, but it insists on conscious desire, desire that respects, desire that listens, desire that gives. Love is harmony between two individuals. The body physical is a temple. Sacred sexuality begins with companionship, not chemistry. It grows through mutual care, not manipulation. It respects the body not only as a vehicle of pleasure, but as a bridge to the soul, a place where both people can be fully seen. This teaching isn't prudish, it's profound. It doesn't ask us to avoid sex, it asks us to elevate it. Because when sexuality becomes a dialogue of love, the body remembers it was made for more than gratification. It was made for communion, for joy, for truth, and for becoming one, not just in form, but in spirit.
When you heal the male and female inside of yourselves, you may then look at the parents and see inside of them their wounds that they received as children, and you see them no longer afflicting you. You embrace them with an unconditional love of the Father, Mother, God inside of you, and you become the healer, the forgiver of past conflicts and past wounds.
They will become like children to you, and so with grandparents, so with all of ancestry that extends back into the light that you were, and into the light that you are becoming through your children and their children's children. All of your ancestry is healed, all of it becoming a spiritual ancestry from any life you have lived.
The sins of the parent are passed on for 7 generations. It is then with ease that we may put our burdens upon generations past, and or retire them to a generation in the future.
Reparenting is not a psychological exercise alone. In this transmission, it's described as a sacred act, a portal through which not only personal healing occurs, but ancestral healing as well. When you heal the male and female inside of yourselves, you become the forgiver of past conflicts. This quote grounds the core teaching. Internal integration doesn't just free you, it alters your entire relational field. When your inner masculine and feminine energies find harmony, you stop projecting unresolved patterns onto others. You begin to see your parents not as a source of wounding, but as humans, often children themselves, trapped in generational loops of unmet needs and unacknowledged pain. From this view, emotional maturity isn't about detachment, it's about recognition. It's the moment you realize your parents acted from what they knew, and even what they didn't know was passed down from those before them. They become like children to you. This is a profound shift. You no longer relate to your lineage from a place of resentment, blame, or guilt. You meet it with tenderness, with compassion. You step into the role of the healer, not because you're above it, but because you've become capable of holding what they couldn't. This is responsibility. You carry not just your trauma, but the possibility of resolution. In this framework, healing the inner child becomes an act of transmutation. It clears not just your emotional body, but the psychic weight of generations. All of your ancestry is healed, all of it becoming a spiritual ancestry. This phrase invites a radical reframing. Ancestry is not just biological, it's spiritual. It includes the energetic imprints you carry from your family, culture, soul lineage, and perhaps even from lives lived before this one. And every act of healing you commit to, every cycle you break consciously, radiates outward and backward. This is how karmic debt becomes spiritual legacy. The sins of the parent are passed on for 7 generations. That line, often quoted with dread, is not a curse. It's a timeline. It suggests that what is unhealed continues until it's confronted. And when it is, the healing reverberates, not just forward, but in all directions. You're not just healing your parents, you're reweaving the story that shaped them. And when you do, you don't just become whole. You become the elder your lineage never had. You become the ancestor who chose to remember.
For the sacred relationship is to awaken the God and the goddess inside of us, to awaken the Father-Mother God. For when they are reunified as lovers, no longer repressing either masculine or feminine side of self, they then give birth to the sons and daughters of God. They then give awakening to the restoration of ourselves as co-creators in this wonderful world.
The great love that exists between man and woman and lovers of all expressions and all kinds is indeed a wondrous gift. It is existing for all who open their hearts. It is really the acceptance of full empowerment. What holds one back from receiving the great gift of love and the harmony it brings is perhaps a fear of coming into a completion within oneself, which is a complete healing of mind, body, and spirit.
When you walk together both into the light, be nurtured and become one. This is the unity of night and day, of light and shadow, revealing each other's seamless nature. One not being a reflection or submissive to the other, but each in their appropriateness, seamless, unified, life-promoting.
The sacred relationship is not something we find in another. It's something we remember in ourselves. This transmission describes it as a reunion of the inner God and goddess, what it calls the Father-Mother God. These aren't symbolic roles or archetypes to act out. They are primordial forces inside each person, energies that, when unified, become the source of creation itself. When they are reunified as lovers, they give birth to the sons and daughters of God. This is a poetic way of saying, when your inner polarities stop fighting and start dancing, something new is born. Your capacity to co-create with life. This message is especially relevant today, in a culture that teaches people to search outside for completion. We chase ideal partners, optimize our dating profiles, or avoid relationship altogether, because we've forgotten the first union, the one within. But sacred relationship begins when the inner masculine and feminine come in right relation, not dominance, not submission, but mutual reverence. As the text says, one not being a reflection or submissive to the other, but each in their appropriateness, seamless, unified, life-promoting. This internal alignment is what allows real intimacy to happen externally. You stop seeking someone to rescue or fix. You stop projecting your unmet needs onto another. You enter relationship as a whole being, ready to witness, receive, and create with another whole being. And this applies to all kinds of love: romantic, familial, communal, spiritual. It's not about form, it's about frequency. When love flows from inner completeness, it doesn't demand or perform, it radiates. But this level of love asks something of us: radical presence. We can't fake it. We can't outsource it, and we can't achieve it through control. We have to soften into it, but just as much as we must also step into it with strength. That's the paradox and harmony of polarity. The great love that exists between lovers of all kinds is not so rare as one might imagine. It is existing for all who open their hearts. To open your heart is to become willing again, willing to hold both strength and softness, to risk knowing yourself so well that love is no longer a transaction, but a transmission. You walk together into the light and become one. The sacred relationship isn't a destination, it's a state of being. When you live from inner unity, you bring peace to everything you touch. You embody reconciliation. You become a living example that polarity does not mean conflict. You become a force of wholeness in a world that is still learning to remember what that means. This episode is presented by Aten, makers of mystic goods and inspirational media that support a more conscious and emotionally attuned world. All handmade in Ojai, California, their offerings include vibrational flower mists that promote emotional well-being, and the Mindset Shift Oracle Deck, a unique tool for redirecting negative emotions and adding emotional depth to existing tarot readings. Explore more at atenray.com, ATENRAY.com. So what did we find helpful in today's transmissions? Here's what stood out. We contain both masculine and feminine energy. It's not about gender, it's about design. The masculine part of us gives form and action, and the feminine side of us gives depth and response. You don't need to choose between them. You're meant to embody both. The soul was never broken, just divided. What feels like personal conflict often comes from a deeper spiritual forgetting. Healing means remembering your original wholeness. Emotions aren't problems, they're signals. Anger is alertness, fear is care. Shame is a call to realign. When you stop treating emotions like defects, they begin to function as guidance systems. Shadow work is sacred work. The parts of you that feel too much, too reactive, too dark, they aren't in the way. They are the way. Your light casts them. Learning from them makes you whole. Sex is a conversation, not a currency. Sacred sexuality is rooted in sensitivity, trust, and presence. It begins with companionship, not performance. It thrives in mutual awareness. Your family's pain isn't yours to carry, but it's yours to heal. When you integrate your inner world, you break inherited patterns. You become the rebalancer of your lineage, not by force, but by being whole. The sacred relationship is internal. It's not about finding the one. It's about becoming someone whose inner masculine and feminine live in right relationship. From that place, all external connection becomes clearer, deeper, and freer. Love isn't performance, it's presence. You don't have to prove your worth. You were whole before anyone ever told you otherwise. I hope these findings spark something, insight, clarity, or even a quiet shift in how you see yourself. Thanks for being here. If something in this transmission stirred a memory, opened a question, or touched a feeling you couldn't quite name, you're in the right place. This view isn't about solving modern relationships. It's about remembering what real connection asks of us. Beneath the roles, the defenses, the strategy, something quieter has been waiting. The original rhythm, the sacred relationship. The place where clarity meets softness, where strength makes space for feeling. Intimacy begins where performance ends, and for most of us, that's unfamiliar ground. We were taught how to attract, how to protect, how to measure. But love lives somewhere else. It lives in the space that requires vulnerability, this mythic space that stops managing perception and starts telling the truth of who we actually are. And once that honesty comes forward, we also learn to protect that vulnerability in each other. We create a safe space to live honest, harmonious lives. This kind of connection can't be manufactured. It's remembered. When you start to feel it again, inside your own rhythms, in the quiet moments, in the way your body responds to something real, you're already remembering. Download the episode reflection guide at atenray.com, atenray.com. It's there to help carry the transmission forward, practically, privately, in your own time. Thanks for listening. I'm Dustin. This is HumanGPT, Forgotten Transmissions. Stay open, stay whole, and keep listening, especially to the parts of you that are finally ready to be seen.